Alright, so last week we took mindfulness to a deeper and more focused level. We began to see how when we're feeling blocked, constrained, stopped, or otherwise disempowered, what's usually actually there is a whole world of invisible threats that we cannot see, but we feel and are impacted by nonetheless. If you did the work of chasing your threats down the rabbit hole last week, then you might have begun to notice something interesting. When you dig deep enough across many different circumstances, then you might notice that all of the invisible threats begin to point in the same direction for you. They point towards the same underlying fear or the same emotional charge. And there's a point to this. If you get this next idea, and I mean if you actually discover it for yourself, like your own version of it, not just a conceptual understanding, then I promise it will change your life and possibly even change the game that you're playing in this program. I want to introduce you to this idea of your invisible, ever-present threat. At the bottom of the rabbit hole, when you search for the ultimate threat behind every threat, you discover a secret belief and fear that has actually been running your life. And when I say running your life, I mean running your whole entire life. Remember, I said that the brain's job is to seek out threats and keep us safe. Now I want to go a little deeper into the impact of this fact. When we're growing up as kids, naturally we're born experiencing ourselves as whole, perfect, complete, loved, safe, and fundamentally okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong in our worlds, and everything is as it should be, except for when we shit ourselves or when we need some milk. But then there's a moment where that experience ends. Each and every one of us has a breach or a break, like a glitch in the matrix. It's the moment where we no longer experience ourselves as whole, complete, loved, safe, or okay. It's the moment where we determine that something is wrong. And it's usually one of our very first experiences of true failure or threat to our being. And it usually has a strong emotional charge. And because our brains are built to find threat and keep us safe, then our brains latch on to this experience and it says, I must never experience this again. And then we get tuned, like we grow antenna, and we become especially sensitive to a certain type of threat and a certain type of emotional charge. We actually become so sensitive that we begin to see that threat in places where it's not actually there. And then we go through life developing ourselves, choosing things, making decisions, creating goals, and being a certain way, all to avoid that threat. It's insidious. So, I'll summarize again what your ever-present threat actually is and where it comes from, how it develops. As a child, you experience yourself as whole, perfect, complete, loved, safe, and okay. And then you have a moment where it's a glitch in the matrix and you're like, holy shit, there's something wrong. And it's usually a strong emotional experience of a failure in your life. Like a failure to be good enough, or a failure to produce a result or do something that your parent expected you to do. And that experience is a sign that I must or must not be blank. I must not be good enough. I must not be okay. I must be bad or not a good person. I must be a disappointment. I must be alone. There must be something wrong with me. And it goes on and on. All of us have our own version. And this belief this thought that we have in that moment of failure, this conclusion that we arrive at, becomes true for us for the rest of our lives. In addition to that, we make up our minds that we're never going to have that experience again. So we spend the rest of our lives secretly believing that we are blank and trying desperately to avoid it and hide it from others. That is your invisible, ever-present threat. And the funny thing is there's a paradox here, because we have the part of ourselves that believes it's true, and so it's familiar to us, and we have the part of ourselves that is deathly afraid that it's true and will avoid it at all costs. And those two parts are at war. So we spend our whole lives trying to hide it and do things that help us avoid it, while also somehow experiencing the same thing over and over and over again. The paradox is that almost every choice we make or everything we do becomes a setup to experience it again and keep it in place. So I'll share mine with you. Picture me as a 4-year-old boy in preschool. There's this girl who's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen in my entire 4 years of life. She's my crush. One day we have nap time and our cots just happen to be right next to each other. And while I'm trying to go to sleep, she turns to me and says, "Hey Miles, give me your hand." And I get so excited. And I reach out to take her hand. But halfway there she says, "Wait, don't you have ringworm or something?" And I'm like, yeah, because I did at the time. And she just says, "Never mind," and turns to another boy and asks for his hand. In that moment, it was really clear to me, I'm not wanted. There's something wrong with me. I must not be good enough. That experience just planted the seed for me. A few years later, I'm 7 years old and I'm at home with my dad and my younger brother. He says that he's going to pick my sister up from gymnastics practice, and he leaves me and my brother at home by ourselves. Now, he doesn't come back that night, and all I can remember is crying for hours and hours, checking the refrigerator, trying to call my parents. There weren't any cell phones back then. And I remember it was clear to me, this thought at that moment, he must not want me. I must not be wanted. And it was done. I'm not wanted became my ever-present threat. The thing that I secretly believed was true about myself, and yet desperately have tried to avoid throughout my entire life. So what did I do? Well, first, I began to experience the world as one big threat of rejection. I automatically assumed that people didn't want me and that they were judging me or didn't want to be around me, or they were disgusted by me or something. And I adapted. I said, okay, well, if I'm not wanted, then I'll make you want me. I'll do what I need to do and I'll become valuable. I'll become likable. I'll be great, because people want people who are popular. And at the same time, I developed social anxiety and grew incredibly awkward. And it was all to avoid this experience. It gets even deeper and even more insidious, but I'll save that for another video. The point is that once I discovered my threat, I could really see that it was the engine running my whole life. I also saw how it blocked me from all the things that I most wanted. And I gained the awareness and the power that I needed to finally escape it and live freely. Each of you has your own ever-present threat that is running your life. And I am committed. We are going to spend the next few sessions ensuring that each and every one of you gets it, discovers it for yourself. And I'll start by introducing the process of discovering it so that you can know what to expect. and maybe even try to walk through it yourself. So again, on a high level, your ever-present threat is the thing that you secretly believe must be true about yourself, and that you desperately avoid experiencing it or desperately try to hide. This is how you get it. First of all, you can take almost any experience of threat and chase it down the rabbit hole to the core underlying threat. Once you do that for enough of them, the pattern will become clear. For many of us, it's not actually the threat that's at the bottom, but it might be the second to bottom one. For me, there were a few other threats behind I'm not wanted, like my life won't turn out okay, or I'm not good enough, etc. But I'm not wanted carried the biggest charge, which actually brings me to my next point. Your ever-present threat will resonate with you emotionally. You will feel it when you say it. It will feel true. And each of us tends to have our own emotional flavor or theme. For mine, it was rejection, fear of rejection. For some people, it's inadequacy. For some people, it's guilt or shame. For others, it's loss. For some, it's disappointment. For some, it's overwhelm and dread. And it's useful to know this because once you think you have it, you can actually scan your life and see that that feeling and that thought is everywhere at the root of almost every threat in your life. And once you can put words to it, then you can begin to follow that emotional experience backwards through your life to get to the source. And this is important. The most profound way to really get your ever-present threat is to see all the ways that it has been put together and built on and shaped throughout your life since the very first experience, because then that gives you a keen insight into all the ways it's actually running your life. In order to get this, you follow the feeling, the emotional experience backwards. And there are questions that you can use or a process that you can follow. Once you get an idea of the emotion and the threat, then you ask yourself first, when was the last time that I had this experience? Or the last time where this emotion was especially present for me? Once you locate that, you actually want to put yourself in that memory as if you're reviewing it in the present. And you ask yourself, well, where am I? What's happening? What am I thinking and feeling right now? And you allow it, you give yourself permission to review that experience again. And once you finish with that, then you ask yourself again, when was the last time I had that experience? And it's like rinse, wash, and repeat until you get to the very first or one of the earliest experiences of that emotion and that threat. And I want to make a point. It's oftentimes not some big life-changing event. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the times it might feel like a relatively trivial event or experience. But the thing is, for you as a child, it was pivotal because it was your first experience of not being okay or of something being wrong. And again, you'll know that you have it because once you put words to it, you'll actually feel an emotional resonance. And you will very clearly be able to see how it's been running your entire life. How it has been behind all of your decisions, motives, actions, all of your mistakes, all of your successes, in your dreams and your nightmares, literally everywhere. And so, once you get it, and I'll be doing this work with you in the program, I want you to stop and ask yourself or reflect, how does this actually show up in my life? What are all the ways it shows up? And more specifically, how is it showing up in my 10x game, in my 10x goal? And how is it showing up in my actual participation, how I'm being in the program? Because however you are in the program is how you are in life. So that's all. I'm so excited for all of you to get it and to really begin to unravel the impact that it has on your life. It will not be comfortable, but I guarantee you it will change your life. Talk to you soon. Peace.